Welcome to In the News for March the 25th, 2022. I am Brett Birdie from appsandlaw.com.
It's Jeff Richardson from iPhone JD. Hey, Brett.
Hi, Jeff. First off, please, let's get a quick check-in because we saw some headlines this past week, right? Was it Monday, Tuesday or so, about some tornadoes in New Orleans? And I know you guys have to deal with hurricanes a lot, but tornadoes. Okay, everybody okay? Are you okay?
Everybody's good.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah, you're right.
Okay.
We don't deal with tornadoes very often in New Orleans. So when like all four iPhones in my house, me, my wife, and my two kids all started beeping at the same time with that tornado warning.
Emergency
we're like,
alerts,
what
right?
in the world? Exactly. Like, what in the world is this? But no, we got into like a safe room in the house that had no windows and all was fine. I mean, we were fine, but I tell you what, you look at the map and it really didn't come that far from where I live and the poor people who were affected. I mean, again, those of us and folks in the Midwest and stuff like that deal with tornadoes all the time, they are scary, scary things.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay, good. I just wanted to check in. Thanks for letting us know. And let's jump then right into your first story. How many G's do you really need? I'm so glad you started off with this talking about 5G is what we're referring to here. And the fact that a lot of the more modern iPhones like the 12 and the 13 can connect to 5G. I mean, we can't get away from it, right? All of the big carriers have been talking 5G, 5G, 5G for a while now. Mm-hmm. And so I know there's a lot of confusion in it, including myself, Mr. Jeff. So you reported on a great story here from a couple of, actually the Wall Street Journal. I saw the one that you linked to from Nicole and Nguyen, I believe. But then there was another good one, which is a little bit older, from one of our favorite reporters, Joanna Stern, which just kind of explains some of this. Or the main thing you were linking to today is this story from Nicole about how 5G, if you can find it and your phone connects to it, you might want to watch the battery drain on your iPhone.
Yeah. 5G, as you say, Brett, the Apple and, Google and all of the cell phone companies say 5G, 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 because it's a marketing thing. You upgrade to the latest new phone and they want to get people to buy new stuff and to sign new contracts and stuff. For me, the jury is still out on 5G because although it has the potential to be great, and I frankly do believe it is going to be great, we are at the point where for most folks right now, I don't think that 5G presents a big advantage. And what this Wall Street Journal article revealed was that the speeds that you can get with 5G, and let's talk about that. Let me table that for just 5 seconds here.
Okay.
The bottom line is that the speeds you can get for most 5G is about the same as what you would get for 4G LTE. So if you're getting the same speed, what is the advantage? And as she points out, there's actually sort of a disadvantage because you may get about an hour or even 2 hours, depending upon your phone, less battery life because 5G is more battery intensive. So you're not getting an advantage. Okay. And you're using more battery life. It makes you wonder, why do you use it? And let me say this about 5G. 5G is confusing because it doesn't just mean one thing, which is annoying. And it doesn't even mean one thing from carrier to carrier. There's three different types of 5G. You have the normal 5G, which is about the same speed as 4G LTE, which means that you can typically, if you got a decent connection, you can see between 50 and 100 megabits per second, which are fantastic speeds for a mobile device or even for like an iPad or something. So normal 5G is plenty fast. And then you've got at the high end, you have the millimeter wave version of 5G, which can be like, 1 gigabit per second. It's sort of like having gigabit internet at your house. And that is super, 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 super fast. But most of the technology that uses it, they have these radios that because they're such a high frequency, and again, I'm not an engineer or anything like that, but I know just a little about this. It's got to be really close to your phone. So like you will have areas and cities where you will have the millimeter wave 5G, and you've got to be like line of sight very close. I mean, literally, if it rains, that's enough to be interference for it. If you're inside, even though if you're like 30 feet away from it, you may not get the signal. So it's really, really short wave, and it requires a whole lot of antennas for it to work. And then you've got this middle range, which is about half the speed, still very fast. I mean, like 500, megabits per second. So, it could be 5 times faster than normal 5G. And we're just starting to see that. That's like the C band. You and I were talking a few weeks ago about how it was stalled for a while because there was an issue about not turning it on close to airports because it could interfere with the radio equipment that planes use to communicate and find out how close they are to the ground, just in case the pilot can't see and has to rely on that. So it's all complicated stuff. You never know what you're going to get. But the real thing is, I've heard people say that, where I live, I can actually get the super fast versions of 5G sometimes. And to that, I say, well, you are amongst the lucky, because I have never seen 5G in New Orleans. This is my second iPhone that supports it. I've never seen the super fast version of 5G in New Orleans. I know it's here somewhere, but I never see it. And I know in other areas it's hard to get. And you don't even know, because the indicators on your phone are very confusing as to what kind of 5G. And so, I mean, it's worth talking about that for a second. If you please. So let's go through the big carriers in the United States. AT&T, that's what I use. They have 3 different designations. They have something which is the cheating designation, which is 5GE. And 5GE ain't 5G. That's actually 4G. They started to use that with 4G, saying we're on the way, the evolution towards 5G. So it's the evolution towards 5G, but it's not 5G. Goodness. So if your phone says 5GE, that's actually 4G. How confusing would that be? What your phone would say for AT, if you just say 5G at the top of your iPhone, that's the slower normal version of 5G. And I hate to say slower because it's still plenty fast. It's just about the same speeds that you saw with LTE. And then if you see 5G plus, that's either that mid-range version like the C-band or the millimeter wave. That's the super, super fast stuff. If you see 5G plus, go crazy, download something really big. That's super fast. Verizon, it'll put 5G on your phone with the normal 5G, and it'll say 5G UW, or I think Android phones might say UWB, but iPhones would say UW, and that's ultra wideband, excuse me. But even that word ultra wideband can be confusing because those of us who are Apple nerds know that for the AirTags, the Find My stuff that Apple uses, they use that phrase ultra wideband to refer to the type of near communication that not only can you see how far your AirTag is, but like what direction it is. So your phone will say go left to find it or go right to find it. So that word's used. And then if you've got T-Mobile, they have what they call 5G extended range, which just says 5G in your phone. That's the normal 5G. And then they have 5G UC, which is ultra capacity, and that's that mid-band range and ultra. So, different phones say different things. It means they use different words. It's confusing. It's a pain. And when the Wall Street Journal recommends you might just want to keep 4G on all the time, I got to tell you, it's not a bad recommendation. For me personally, and then I'll be quiet and let you talk. But for me personally, I keep, as I put in my post, I keep 5G on because I have really good battery life with my new iPhone. So I'm not trying to get that last hour of power out. And I keep hoping that one of these days I'll look down at my phone and I'll see the 5G plus just to experience it. But I really haven't yet. So anyway, that's what can you say? 5G, but it's got promise, right? It's going to get good in the future. In theory, it allows to have a larger group of people can be sharing bandwidth more efficiently. So there really is promise. It's just slow going to get there.
Well, I guess the only single flicker of encouragement I have is we've been through this before. In fact, I've long had a distrust of whatever little symbol is up in the corner of my phone, because we did this. I remember going through this with 3G. I remember like 4G, then we had LTE. I mean, there's just so many symbols. And unfortunately, while it sounds kind of more like scientific and logical about what you see there should be what you get, it becomes more of a marketing thing than anything else. So I'm not pointing fingers at the carriers, because I understand marketing is a huge part of what they're doing, but it's just what you said. Like, in fact, even Apple's own support page that I've pulled up here indicates that even if you see 5G, which you've already pointed out may not even really be 5G, but if you see 5G, that doesn't mean you're connected to 5G necessarily. It means that there is a 5G network available that the phone could connect to, because apparently the phones actually determine in some cases whether or not they go to. Yeah, it's like, it doesn't mean actually it's connected. It says there is a 5G network available. Now, again, I don't know any more than that because I'm not an engineer either. But it's so frustrating. There are areas here in the Cleveland, Ohio area where I am that it says 5G, but then if I drive even closer to downtown, I can't even remember now what it is. I just know that it does change. I'm a little bit out in the country a little bit, so I see LTE most of the time. But if I go closer into a metropolitan area around Cleveland where I am, then it will change to 5G. And I think I have seen 5G plus before, but it's just so varied in how it goes. You also linked to another story here, by the way, from John Gruber, which I thought was great. That let's see, you had it in here somewhere. I thought
it was right in the very top. Yeah,
the very, very top. Okay, yeah. Where he was basically suggesting kind of the same thing, right? That if you don't want to see the battery drain necessarily of 5G, because this is something that the phone is having to do. Not only is it looking for different networks, but it's going to have to decide if it does connect to it, and that takes a little bit more to connect to a 5G. John Gruber here just says, just turn it off. Like, if it's not going to be that much of a difference in the speed, which is exactly what you were saying earlier, you can just go turn it off. And by the way, I didn't even know you had some of these settings here on Apple support page here. You can go into your settings. You can go into the cellular, right? And you have a choice on how you determine your phone will connect to the voice plan, whether 5G or not, which is what I think you were referring to. And then there's the data mode, right? Which is kind of what we're talking about with a lot of these higher, faster speeds, because these stories from Nicole and from Joanna too, we're talking about how fast that they can, download a very large video file or something along those lines, or a game or something like that to their phone or even their iPad.
Yeah, to a certain degree, it's even academic nowadays, because I remember the days when this speed makes a huge difference, right? I mean, when my very first iPhone back in 2008 used Edge, which was painfully slow.
Yes,
you wanted to load something, even just a normal web page, just a medium complication like the New York Times or something, it would be so slow. And then when 3G came out, it got to be a little bit faster. But by the time 4G and then 4G LTE, that's when you started to get to the point where, it's just fast enough. And so that's how it is now. So, I mean, most of the time, whether I am seeing normal 5G, or just, slow, whatever it is, it's basically going to be fine. It's rare that I'm downloading things on my mobile devices that it makes that big of a difference.
Yeah, exactly.
If I have my computer tethered to my phone, then, and I'm downloading big files, I notice a tiny bit more. But, we have the luxury of living in an age where all of these speeds are great. But don't get me wrong. I mean, I'd love to be able to use, 5G plus or 5G ultra wideband or 5G, whatever one of the fastest versions. Sure, why not? That's great, faster, better, good. But but it can be confusing.
Well, one of the other things that Nicole mentioned here in this Wall Street Journal article is referring to Joanna Stern's earlier article, where she was, I think she was driving around in like a little camper, right, and was going around town. Now, Joanna is in New Jersey, and you talk about this just a little bit, whereas Nicole, the author of the reporter from this first article, she's in San Francisco. Well, since Joanna was in New Jersey,
I thought Joanna Stern was in New York. I thought she was in New York City, but regardless, it doesn't matter.
Well, I mean, she went to New Jersey apparently because
this is where
she knew that some of the towers were there. And so Nicole even mentions that Joanna did get an incredibly sounding 1,300 megabits per second down.
That's super fast.
She was right underneath the tower in New Jersey.
How convenient is that?
So I think she was parked right underneath the tower, because there's a whole level thing going on here, which you just referred to there a little bit, Jeff, with, the 5G. It's basically piggybacking on some of the other networks that we have. And it could cause some interference with some other very important networks, like what you talked about with the pilots and stuff. And so the way that this works, it's not, it can't creep in or go through walls or other solid objects quite as easily. I mean, again, this is a very simplified layman's understanding that I'm trying to get across here. But it was just the fact I thought that was interesting. If you can get the 5G plus and you're very close, apparently, hugging a cell phone tower, then you can get an amazing download speed. I mean, 1,300 megabits. I usually get 200 back in my home. I mean, that's incredible. You could get that kind of speed not connected to Wi-Fi or something like that. But again, you have to be, there's a lot of factors that would go into that. That's very, very interesting. Anything else that we want to say? I think I liked one little quote here from John Gruber at Daring Fireball. He says, those crazy fast ultra wideband download speeds are like owning a car that can go 200 miles an hour.
Exactly.
When are you going to go 200 miles an hour?
You can say
right?
you can have it, but how much you can actually use it.
Right. Right. Okay, good stuff on there. I don't know if it really helped anybody with understanding the 5G. But again, to go back to I think my first comment that I made, Jeff, is like the encouragement, the flicker of encouragement is these are just sort of, the journey that we have to get on. It is coming. There are people that are using this, and sometimes we just have to be a little patient because I mean, we are kind of oversimplifying it. I know it's a lot of work to make sure that we get more cell phone towers. And by the way, I think that somebody even mentioned this too as well. There's a whole camp there that isn't happy about additional cell towers and additional, waves of millimeter, all that kind of stuff. But it is the world in which we live in today. From 5G cellular networks, let's go to the Wi-Fi aspect. You had a couple of great links here where you were talking about yet another confusing hodgepodge of numbers and letters as well. We all know Wi-Fi. And in the old days, this is kind of a link to the story that you had, we would say numbers like 802.11 A or
with
or
letters,
B, or G.
A or B or N, or there was all these different letters, or AC.
Well, apparently, now they're going to two letters, right? AC. But apparently, the people in charge of this have decided that was a little too confusing, and now they're just going to call it Wi-Fi 6. And so you had a great story here from Jason Cross in Macworld, what Wi-Fi 6E means for the future of the iPhone. Pretty interesting stuff here as well.
Yeah. And, to keep it simple, Wi-Fi 5 is the one that most of us have. Wi-Fi 6 is the next generation. Most people don't have Wi-Fi 6 yet. Wi-Fi 6E is an even faster version of it. I don't believe Apple's selling any devices that support it, but it's presumably coming in the future. But I think they do support Wi-Fi 6. I mean, to put it in practical terms, some folks have gigabit internet at their house. Right. That's like the highest level that you can get from some cable providers and some, Google, if you have fiber, that sort of stuff. That's what I have in my house. My house is the gigabit. Right. So that's the fastest theoretically you can get. And I noticed that on my computer, which is actually, hardwired through an Ethernet cable to my modem, I can actually get pretty close to that. I can get 950. Which is incredibly fast for my computer. Yeah. If I am syncing things to Dropbox or downloading huge video files, it's nice to have all of that speed. But I don't have all of that speed in my house. I use an eero in my house, and the version that I have is the Wi-Fi 5, and I think it caps out at 500 megabits per second. So basically a half of what my full gigabit would be. And so this new 6 and now 6E, which just came out, I believe, yesterday, the eero version of 6E, it can actually, in theory, go all the way up to the full gigabit per second. But to get to your statement before about having the 200 mile per hour car that you can't drive much more than 60, so what's the point of it? I sort of feel the same way because a lot of the stuff that I'm doing at home, 500 megabits per second is more than fast enough. Now, the reality is you want to have as fast as possible because we all know that the farther that you get from the Wi-Fi routers in your house, the speed is going to go down, and so if you start with the higher speed to begin with, in theory, that means even if you cut half or a quarter of the capacity, you're still really, really fast. But in our home, unlike the cell phone things we were talking about before, in your home, you do have reasons that it's really nice to have the fastest Wi-Fi for, for video conferences and for files and for the fact that you've got multiple people using computers in your house and streaming videos on, your Apple TV or whatever device you use connected to your television. So it does make a difference. And even then, recommendation I'll have for your home is that Wi-Fi is great, but keep in mind that anytime that you can do a wired connection in your home, that's going to always be more dependable because even though Wi-Fi can have really good top speeds, it drops out from time to time. We've all seen that before, whereas an Ethernet connection can be more dependable. So at my house, for example, I have 3 eeros in my house, which spread the Wi-Fi mesh throughout my house and my backyard. It's fantastic. But 2 of them I have got connected to each other with an Ethernet cable. And the one that is in my the room that my TV is in, I have a wired connection to my Apple TV. So I've got the fastest possible connection to my Apple TV for streaming movies and stuff. And I don't have to worry about the Wi-Fi dropping. It's going to always have that fastest connection. But then my third eero, which is in another part of my house, it just has a radio connection to the other ones, and it just provides Wi-Fi. So it's a lot to think about. The bottom, as I said at the end of my post on this, the bottom line here is you don't need this if you've currently got good Wi-Fi in your house. But if you are about to buy a new router for your house, whether it's an eero or some other brand, it's always good. Routers you tend to hold on to for a long time. I mean, I've had, when Apple used to sell routers, I used to hold on to them for 5-10 years, long time. So you might as well get one with the new standard, because that way, if it really makes a big difference 4, 5, 6 years from now, you still got something that's got some staying power.
So it's like the router could be future proofed. In other words, you can buy ahead. But I from a practical standpoint, I know that you are sometimes offered from your internet company, whether it's your cable company or not, you can buy a router that supports the gigabit, but your devices may not connect at that level, which is okay because the device will connect at its whatever the maximum that it can connect at. But it's almost like you have it there, you just may not be able to use it. So just be aware of that. In other words, I think the iPhone 13 can connect to Wi-Fi 6, if I'm correct, right? But I don't know if any Macs can connect to Wi-Fi 6. And I don't know, do they have
and I don't think any, and this newest 6E,
I
don't think anything can connect to it yet, but presumably that'll be coming maybe later on this year. So
in fact, in Jason Cross right here in an article, he says higher end Macs and iPads released maybe in 2023 stand a very good chance of supporting it. So anyway, just as an FYI, again, I feel like this is more of a marketing thing a lot of times, and like, hey, we've got this new technology that can be used, and it's great. No problems in upgrading your router to support it, but just be aware that if you're connecting with an iPhone and maybe trying to do a speed test or something, that you just may not see the fact that you are going to get that speed, and just know that sometimes it's because the hardware can't support it.
Yeah, I will say this though, for Wi-Fi routers in your house, if you're looking to get a new Wi-Fi router, definitely go with mesh. Mesh makes a huge difference. I like the eero because eero has mesh, but there are other companies that have mesh routers too, and they work really, really well. Was such that upgrade. Put aside the speed upgrades, the upgrade to a mesh version of Wi-Fi made such a huge difference in my house. I wish I had done it sooner.
Yeah, you've talked about this quite often, and I'll link to your review of the eero. You've updated it, I think, since
that was like 2 years ago
when they came out. Okay, very, very good. Last week we talked about something that both of us found so very, very, very cool, and that is universal control. Kind of a plain vanilla sounding name for it, right? I feel like Apple should have come up with something maybe a little more splashy for this, because what it is that if you have a Mac computer, this is one of the simple ways to use it. You can have a Mac, you can set your iPad next to it, and move your keyboard can control both your Mac and your iPad. Now, this article that you linked to from Josh Sinners, I thought was great, especially at the bottom here where he talks about some of the gotchas or some of the things, to be looking out for. This just came out in 15.4. Everything has to be upgraded to that. Everything has to be connected to iCloud. And they have to be sitting next to each other. There's a few gotchas here. Probably the biggest gotcha is the fact that it is still, quote, in beta, right? Apple says it's in beta. So if there's any problems, it's not like, Apple may decide whether they're going to fix that or not. But this was a great article from Josh Sinners. And it sounds like, just from your post today, Jeff, that you've been using universal control even a little bit more yourself now.
Yeah. When we talked about it last week in the No segment, I was talking about using universal control as you just described it, so that your keyboard and your mouse can control your computer peripherals, can control your iPad, which is really nice.
Right.
But one thing I didn't talk about, which this article talks about, and another one that I know that you're going to get to, is that universal control also makes it so that you can easily just transfer files back and forth. And so, it is so easy that if you're on your Mac and you've got like a picture or a couple pictures or a PDF file or a number of PDF files, and you select them and you hold down like you're going to drag them, but instead of just dragging them to another folder on your Mac, you drag them off the screen of your Mac and onto the screen of your iPad, as long as you let go on a place in your iPad that can accept things. So you can't just put it on your iPad's home screen, because iPads can't have files dropped in their home screen. But as long as you're in like an app, like for example, what you're showing right here from Lit Software, this is something that lawyers use called TrialPad, where if you have the TrialPad app open, you can, the part of it, the app that has the list of all of your documents, you can just drag things from your Mac to your iPad. And that is so simple, because in the old days, you would have to, am I going to put it in a USB key and plug it in? Am I going to put it on Dropbox and then connect to Dropbox over here? You'd have to sort of go through a middleman to do it. But now if you've got one next to the other, you just drag it over. God, and I just showed on the screen right here. I'm so jealous of this. I use a PC in my office every day. Boy, I wish, Brett, that I could just drag things from my Dell screen right over to my iPad. Oh, I'm jealous.
Maybe one day. Yeah. Maybe one day. Just watching this, and so this is a company called Lit Software. They make some fantastic iPad apps that both of us are very, very keen on, including a trial presentation app, and then also an app for transcript management as well. But just watching this and how they're literally dragging files from a Mac and just seamlessly over to an iPad. It's kind of some of the things you talked about, Jeff. I remember in the old days, first of all, I don't even know if there was a way to get, in the very, very early days, to get files onto the iPad. Then we had something like Dropbox, and we could maybe download files, in a Dropbox app. And then we had the capability that some apps, if you remember this way back in the day, they, like Goodreader, I think, did this. You could go in Goodreader and say, connect Wi-Fi via Wi-Fi to my computer, right? Mm-hmm. And on your computer, you would have to go to like an IP address.
Yeah,
of your
it was a bit of a hack.
It was weird. It was a little bit of hackery, but it did work. Exactly. I used that several times, especially for folks that they couldn't connect to the cloud for whatever reason, or they didn't want to store files in the cloud. This was a good way to copy files back and forth. And then I remember when the Files app came out on the iPad, and one of the big things for me that still is unbelievable, the fact that you can connect a USB thumb drive or an external USB hard drive to the iPad. That still blows me away, that I can access files that way. A lot of professional photographers have been doing this for a long time, right? Connecting their camera to an iPad and shuttling pictures back and forth. But now to see something like this, that we can just so seamlessly drag and drop files from one, it really is one ecosystem, right? The iPad system ecosystem and the Mac ecosystem, and you can drag files back and forth. It's really incredible on this, and I'm so.
And it's just so natural. It's like, well, of course, if somebody knew nothing about computers, they'd be like, well, the two screens are next to each other.
Like this.
Of course, you can just drag one thing from that. Where behind the scenes, it's so sophisticated, the technology that they're doing. So it's really neat. I had, as I mentioned today, I had like my good notes was on my iPad with some notes that I was taking, and I would just want to put a little picture in there, and I could have gone to the Photos app on my iPad and manipulate it that way, but I had the picture just right there on my desktop on my computer, and I just put it over, just plopped it right there, and it was just there in the middle of the notes. I'm like, that's all. I kept waiting for someone to say, and now you got to do step 2 and step 3, but I was done. I was like, oh my goodness, this is just so fast and easy.
I'm very excited to know where this is going to go and to follow this. We were teased about this, about a year ago almost, and we didn't come out. Like Apple kind of continued to polish it up, and I'm just so thrilled that it did. This little section, I'll link to the story that you linked to here from Josh Cinders. He calls this section at the bottom Universal Control Quirks. Mm-hmm. So it's very good. Sometimes you can lose the pointer, or if you're doing a keyboard, and if the focus isn't on an app on the iPad and it's rather on your Mac, and sometimes it can get a little confusing. But to me, these are just tiny little wrinkles that I think are going to get smoothed out as more and more of us continue to use.
Let me mention one that I think that's what he's referring to in your screen that I've noticed. So let's say like I move my cursor from my Mac to my iPad, and I'm using it on my iPad. I'm clicking on things and stuff like that. If I move my cursor back over to the Mac, you may think, because I'm seeing the cursor on the Mac screen, now my keyboard's controlling the Mac. But you actually have to click on the screen. Right. And that you're not in that mode, because if your cursor's over there, but you haven't yet officially taken over control of the computer again, the bar at the very top of your Mac will be grayed out. And that's the visual clue that, no, you're still sort of controlling that iPad over there. So as soon as you click on a window or the screen or click anywhere, then it'll return control. But that's one that when I first started using it for a second, I was a little confused. I'm like, wait a minute, I'm typing. And why am I still over there on the iPad? Because my cursor's over here. Well, you got to tell it what you're doing. And I actually think this makes sense. It just, once you figure out, then you understand, okay, you need to sort of affirmatively tell the devices which one you wanted to use. And that's fine. Right. Just keep that in mind. Take a look at your menu bar if you're confused.
we're literally controlling two different computing systems from one place. You know, to me, it's just a matter of kind of getting my mind wrapped around it a little bit, but it will happen. It will definitely happen. Here's another good article that you linked to. We've talked about this several times in several different ways, which is the Apple Wallet. And I think this was announced. Apple announced something about this, that the Apple Wallet can be used. I know this was a big thing with having our vaccination cards available within the Wallet app. And several other things. You've talked about an app there in Louisiana called LA Wallet for Louisiana, not Los Angeles, but you can put in several, other cards and stuff. We know the wallet can work for credit cards, but finally Arizona has announced that you can actually put in your driver's license into your wallet. This is pretty cool. And I'm even happier. Apparently Ohio was one of the next states that they're going to do this.
Oh, I saw that they announced some of the other states too. Yeah.
Yeah. I just, at first, and I can imagine most people may be listening to this, because this is where my mind was at first. I'm like, yeah, I don't know if that's something I want to do. Like, what's that going to help with? But I love it because, number one, you could lose the physical driver's license. And if you have at least a version in the Apple Wallet, that's great. And then number two, I just traveled the last couple of weeks, and sure enough, I had to get out my identity card, my ID card, my driver's license, and had to show it to the TSA. And that's one of the things that I know in this press release from Apple that they were talking about is really a nice feature, that you don't have to do that anymore. Just scan. Like, I even have my boarding passes. I did that a long time ago on my iPhone. Now I can also have my driver's license on my iPhone, and it's already confirmed and everything, which is great.
Yeah. Or I've had times where I just jump in my car to go to the store around the corner to get something. And I don't, my wallet's upstairs. I don't even need my wallet. I just take my iPhone, which is probably already in my pocket, just jump in the car. If I need my driver's license, for some reason, get pulled over or something, I've got it. I get to the store, I can pay with Apple Pay. And so I just don't have to worry. It's just a nice convenience.
And it sounds like there's like clear instructions on how to do this. In fact, they even have a little video here. It looks like that they're showing that you just scan it. It has to connect with some kind of a service at the state, right? So in other words, they have to verify you've added it within there, and then that's pretty much it. It's pretty easy. You're actually scanning the front, taking a picture of it, and taking a picture of the back. Anyway, we're going to hear more about this, because I'm confident that Arizona is just one of the first of many states that will probably start adopting this, because it just makes sense. I'm really enjoying Apple Wallet more and more.
Yeah, and it's this trend between having more and more. I mean, I want to be able to unlock my front door with my iPhone and have my ID in there and have my car key fob in there, and that way you just have one device. I just want to replace all that stuff. It's great.
That's fantastic. Another story, we've talked about the smart home, and we'll keep talking about it, because I think both of us know this is probably where a lot of interesting technology is going to be happening over the last few years. I remember specifically, I think we talked about this early on when CES came around, Jeff. Maybe I could be mistaken, but these are smart blinds, like window blinds for your house. But I really like this. I think Bradley may have Chambers here from 9 to 5 Mac. He may have talked about this before, but now he has his hands on some, and he had a little video which I just thought was so neat here, where he asked Siri, or sorry, she who shall not be named, to actually open or close the blinds, and it was very quick on the way this happens. Yeah. I don't know if this maybe you can tell me, does it work just with an iPhone, or do you have to have a HomeKit setup and maybe a mini pod as well, or how does
it's on HomeKit? It'll work with anything. It'll work with your iPhone, your Apple Watch, or whatever. Good. And they may also come with the little controllers. I know that some other companies come that way. I've been looking at getting some smart blinds in our home, because we're changing around our living room and about to put in some blinds. And Lutron has some. This is from Eve. Lutron has had some smart blinds for a while. They're really nice, and they're super expensive, and it's hard to justify the cost, because and I know they're custom to the size of your window and all that sort of stuff. It's like so much more expensive to get this version of it, but it would be so cool to be able to have them automatically go up and down at different points of the day, depending upon where the sun is, or you could just press one button and have all the different windows go up and down. So it's neat stuff. I don't know if we'll end up getting it for our house, but I love to see more and more of this smart home stuff. And these smart blinds is one of the relatively newer types of smart home technology.
at first, again, something like this, I'm like, well, okay, is this really that important? But I just thought about it. I went and had breakfast with a friend yesterday morning, and sure enough, the restaurant, somebody had to, one of the waitresses had to climb up on a chair and like open, close the blinds in the sun, and then a little bit later, they climbed up again and opened them up. And now that I'm thinking about this, that would really be useful just to be able to, speak into your phone and have the blinds open and close. I like it. Let's end our news segment with a feel-good story. This is so great. I'm glad you linked to this, Jeff. This is a fairly elderly lady, apparently. I love her name. It's Raylene, which I thought was maybe a Dolly Parton song, but I think that's Jolene.
Jolene.
But this is a lady that's a little bit elderly, but her son had bought her an Apple Watch. And she had an Apple Watch on when she unfortunately took a very, quote, hard fall. And this is, we use that phrase because I think Apple distinguishes that, right? As opposed to like, well, I just kind of, tripped a little bit. But a hard fall is in like somebody is really down. They are not getting up. They're not moving. The heart rate may be going down. There's several factors that the Apple Watch will look at here. It called 911. And not only were they able to come and find this Miss Raylene here unconscious and be able to revive her, but they took her to the hospital and through some other tests discovered that she had some lung cancer that hopefully is going to be treatable. And so she's attributing that to the fact that she had the Apple Watch on, and the son is very happy as well.
Yeah, it's a nice story. And, they have a video along with it. They interview all the people involved. The son explained that he's on the list too, because, if you fall, you can have it set up so that your watch will not just call 911, but call your loved ones. And he said that he actually got a call, but he happened to be in the shower at the time, so he didn't notice it. So he's like, thank goodness it also called 911 to get the paramedics out there. So, I love these stories. It's great when people, can use the Apple Watch as it was intended to save them. And what, she says it saved her life. Who knows? Maybe it did save her life, and that's fantastic.
Yeah. Even they even just have a short quip there from the emergency medical professional.
I saw that. Yeah.
He said specifically it gives the longitude and latitude, like they knew exactly where to go. Like it wasn't just, kind of, a general area in which to park. And, I just thought that was a good on this.
And you hear people talk about that if you're on a bicycle, like you're out, off road somewhere and you know, place that's not close to civilization and you just sort of fall over. It's nice to have the longitude and latitude sent out to people.
That's great. Yeah. Keep those stories coming. I like it. In the know. Speaking of Apple Watch, there is something that I discovered this past week that I was not aware of. Both you and I are very big fans of 1Password, which is our password manager of choice. You don't have to use 1Password, but you should be using a password manager. That's the PSA for today. But so I use 1Password everywhere. I have a Windows computer, two Mac computers, my iPhone, my iPad. It's everywhere because it holds such important information. Now, what was great when the Mac first had a Touch ID on the Mac, I had that. And it was great because every time that I wanted to use 1Password, I had to remember my one very strong password in order to unlock the 1Password software so that it could plug in these very secure passwords to, a website that I was logging into or something else. But the Touch ID, now available on the Mac, was something that I was using. I could just use my finger, very similar to the way that I've been using 1Password and unlocking 1Password on my iPhone or even my iPad. But I just found, I was looking around for something in 1Password and it said you can use your Apple Watch to unlock 1Password as well. Now, I love having the Apple Watch on when I use my Mac, because if the Mac is asleep and I, go and get a cup of coffee and come back and the screensaver came on and the Mac is locked, it will see my Apple Watch and unlock my Mac for me because I have my Apple Watch on. And I know it works very similar to that way on the iPhone as well. So when I saw that I could choose to unlock 1Password with my Apple Watch, I thought, oh, well, this is really cool. I like this because I've been using Touch ID. I will say it is great. I connected it up. I love how it's connected there, but it's almost like a negating of my little tip here, because while it's really cool to have that option, I noticed that when 1Password comes on my Mac, I have to look at my watch and it requires me to like double click my Apple Watch, Jeff, in order to unlock 1Password on my Mac. Now, I think that's great because it allows me to give like another way with the Apple Watch. And, the Apple Watch doesn't immediately unlock 1Password. But I found that lifting up my Apple Watch, double clicking the Apple Watch was a little even more involved than just using the Touch ID on my Mac. Now, I don't know if this would work on maybe some Macs that don't have Touch ID. So maybe this would be, a good alternate way on this. But anyway, that's my tip. I guess even foremost is get a password manager. 1Password is fantastic. Jeff and I are always happy to talk about that. But once you get it on, take advantage of all the neat things that 1Password is doing, including like it'll use Face ID now to unlock it on a phone or an iPad. You can use Touch ID to unlock it on your Mac. And now you can even use the Apple Watch. So like there's different ways to do it so that you don't have to sit there and laboriously type in your one single, very secure password for unlocking 1Password. So that's my tip for the day.
I wish I knew you were going to share this tip today because I would have tried it out last night on my Mac. I knew that I remember reading that this was coming, but I don't have this enabled yet. I use an iMac at home, and unlike you, Brett, you have Touch ID, but I don't have Touch ID on my iMac.
No.
So every single time I open up 1Password, I have to type in my long password, and so it would be so convenient for me to use my Apple Watch, even if I do have to tap it twice, 4 times, report 15 back. Times. So, I need to report back and see if this works. Because if this now works, I'm going to use this all the time. So thank you.
Oh, that's fantastic.
Great stuff.
And by the way, I'll link to this page here that I'm showing here because some people would say, well, I don't know if that's really all that secure. Well, again, Jeff and I have put 1Password through all of its paces, and we can tell you and assure you. And in fact, this explains how it is. It has a secure enclave where it keeps your fingerprint and even the connection with your Apple Watch. So no worries on that.
Yeah, good stuff. Good stuff. My tip today was for folks who use Twitter. I suspect that most people I know from statistics that most people just use the Twitter app on the iPhone, and that's fine. But I have for so long been a fan of this app Tweetbot, which it's only $6 a year. It's super cheap, so 50 cents a month, and I prefer it to the built-in to the native Twitter app for a million reasons. It is a very clean interface. You don't have any of the ads that you have in Twitter. You don't have any of the, when you're on Twitter, they want to do sort of what Facebook does of algorithm. They use an algorithm to show you tweets as opposed. I just want to see, the most recent to the oldest. I just want to see them in chronological order, which is what Tweetbot allows me to do, and it doesn't try to change that. There are a few Twitter features that don't work for third-party clients like Tweetbot. Yeah. Like, for example, for a while, if somebody posted a poll, you couldn't see it. They actually updated it recently, so now you can see the poll. But in Tweetbot, if you actually want to vote in the poll or view the results, you tap and it will open up the Twitter app so that you actually do that over there.
That's so on the Twitter side, right?
Yeah,
it's not Tweetbot's fault.
Oh, that's not Tweetbot's fault. The problem is that Twitter won't give the full access to the third-party apps. There's been a long tradition of fantastic third-party apps. The first one I used to use, and it's still around too, is Twitterrific. In fact, I still pay for Twitterrific because one of these days, if I like it better, I might want to be used back for it. And it's also super cheap. But Tweetbot's the one that I've been using for a number of years. If you don't use Twitter, well, good for you because you probably have a lot more free time in your day. But if you do use Twitter like I do, and that's really my primary source of news. I mean, I follow, news sources that I trust, people that I enjoy, that I'm friends with, technology sources. A lot of the stuff that I put in my Friday in the news post is something I saw on Twitter during the week. So I look at Twitter a lot all the time. And I just cannot recommend Tweetbot more highly. It's great.
I'm so glad you mentioned this because I've been meaning to go back and do this. I'll tell you, first of all, you can use Tweetbot for free. In fact, they can allow you to download it for free on your phone. And I actually have both the Twitter app, the native Twitter app, and then I have Tweetbot. And I've just been using the free version, but I want to upgrade because what I'll do is I'll go into Twitter and kind of see, but the way Twitter is similar to what you were just saying, it doesn't show the tweets in a chronological order. I think there may be a setting that you can show, but Tweetbot does, and it does it very well without plugging in all of the little ads and sponsored stuff in there. And sometimes I just want that clean interface, exactly what you were talking about, Jeff. This is a great. I love, by the way. the company is Tapbots, and they make several great. I like even their calculator that they make. They make several great apps. It's a wonderful little small developer company. But yeah, Tweetbot, what a fantastic tip. That's great.
Yeah, in fact, thanks for mentioning that there's a free version. I've used the paid version for so long that I forget about it. I think one of the features of the paid version is that I have multiple Twitter accounts because like I have my normal one, which is just Jeff Richardson, but then I also have one for iPhone JD. I've got one for this podcast. And I think one of the things is that you can access more than one account.
Yes.
Whereas the free version, I think, is one account, and there may be some other advantages too. Pay the guy $6 just to
exactly
to encourage them to continue to develop this thing.
It's a great app. Yeah, fantastic. Thanks, Jeff. That was great. Glad to know that everybody is safe there in New Orleans. Continue to stay that way and stay safe. Thanks for joining me today, and we'll talk to you next week.
Thanks, Brett. Bye-bye, everybody.